Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this incredibly fashionable woman here is Zoe Lister-Jones. You know her, of course, from her unforgettable role as Paul Moscato on New Girl. You know her from Life in Pieces. You know her from a bunch of other things. She's also a writer and director, wrote and directed Craft Legacy, The Craft Legacy. Right now, you are starring in a bunch of things, including the beautiful A Good Person, which I saw recently. And right now, Beau is Afraid. And now she is the creator, the writer, the director, and the star of the mind-blowing new Roku show called Slip. Hi.
Yay.
How are you? Congratulations.
Thank you so
How
much.
are you not exhausted?
I am.
Okay.
I'm actually sleeping with my eyes open.
Okay, this is a lot for you. This is a lot for one person to do.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. Let's just start with this show. Just so interesting and philosophical and super sexy and funny. We meet your character, May. She's at a crossroads in her life. Talk to me a little about who she is when we first meet her, and then this transformative thing that happens.
When we first meet May, she's stuck in a marriage that's totally functional, but she's feeling very restless within it. And one night has a sort of lapse of judgment and ends up cheating on her husband and has a transcendent sexual experience and wakes up the next morning to discover that she's now married to the man she cheated on her husband with. And then over the course of the series, realizes that through orgasm, she's being transported into a multiverse.
As one does.
Just a casual log line.
As one does. Her orgasm. There is plenty of shows out there and films out there and stories out there about someone being stuck in a multiverse or finding themselves in different realities and different paths. Like we've seen that kind of exploration of the what if, the great big question of the what if. But Zoe, I've never seen one where your portal into the what if and the multiverse is the female orgasm. Why that?
Well, I guess I was interested in centering a woman's pleasure in a way that was like integral to the narrative. I think my mom is an incredible video artist and really raised me to look at media and pop culture through a feminist lens. And so growing up, she was like really focused on, I think especially the sexual objectification and of women on screen. And it's rare that in those scenarios, a woman's pleasure is actually even a part of the conversation. So I think, this is a heady answer, but there was a part of me that wanted to subvert that paradigm. And I also think for me personally, like I was experiencing a sexual awakening later in my life, in my 30s, that when I talked to more women that age, seemed that it was actually a sort of universal experience. And I hadn't seen that explored on screen. And I thought this would be a sort of irreverent and comedic way to explore what a sexual awakening might look like and what a woman's embodiment might look like through a sort of sci-fi lens.
And a mystical one.
Yeah.
It's also very mystical. And I think also when you look at depictions of women's sexual pleasure, it's often through a very unrealistic gaze.
Totally.
Right. Where it is clearly like, okay, the person writing that scene has never seen authentic female pleasure, is my guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
From the way that it's done. And this is so different. This is also, it is a story that asks the questions of why this is happening and why we have this dissatisfaction and this hunger and this restlessness. I want to ask you about how you did the research for this, because it is a mystical, philosophical, almost scholarly investigation while being fun and funny and weird.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm certainly not a scholar, but I did start to become really intrigued by Buddhism, especially as a sort of central tenet and theme throughout the series, and how desire is reckoned with in Buddhism, because like Buddhism is so much about how to navigate human suffering. And I think the show is really about that too, and what to do with that sort of eternal desire for more, no matter what stage or station you're at in your life. And so I did read a lot about that philosophy, and I thought it translated really beautifully into May's story, because it is about embracing a certain amount of uncertainty in order to quiet a lot of those voices that keep us in a state of restlessness. So yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't abide by like a multiverse formula. I was creating a bit more of a fable, I think, that was playing with some old mythologies.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, and it becomes in its own thing. And it's also very much based on your personal life. You started writing this in the pandemic. Tell me a little about what inspired this kind of breakthrough story for you.
Well, I think I was, contending with some similar questions and struggles myself. And I had this idea about a year before quarantine, but I was working on a number of other things. And then when lockdown hit, I wrote the whole season sort of early in lockdown, and it really just served as a lifeline for me. I mean, it was a way for me to try to answer some of those more difficult existential questions, or at least try to answer them. I still don't have them answered, but yeah, I mean, I think it was a very important and cathartic experience for me as a writer. And then every step of the way has also been cathartic, because then giving voice to those words as a performer is a whole other thing, and building these worlds. But it's a show that is also about like fantasy, and seeing fantasies sort of played out to their often disastrous ends. And I think in quarantine, so many of us were relying on fantasy so heavily because we were so isolated. So I really let my imagination run wild, and sort of allowed for myself to go on May's adventure with her when I was feeling really trapped.
Yeah, it really reminds me of when a friend of mine was getting married and had just gotten engaged, and he said, you meet someone and you're attracted to them and you want to have sex with them, and what you don't think is then, I will never have sex with anyone else again for the rest of my life. Like that's not what you're thinking about in those moments. And this is a story that is about the extension of that kind of the fantasy, and the like 10 years later.
Yes.
And the 5 years later, and the now I'm here, and that person that was my fantasy is now my day-to-day, my daily grind.
Boring. Yeah. Well, the grass is always greener, and I think that's such a universal issue for so many people, is like coveting what they don't have, or imagining that what someone else has, it would be a happier existence. And then Slip sort of allows you to jump to the other side of the fence and see what that grass would actually look like.
Through the portal of orgasm.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the sex? I want to talk about the sex, because it is sexy, and all of the sex is different, and you depict it in so many different ways. Creating that environment on a set where you are writing that, and then you are directing that, and then you are there in those moments with these other performers. You had an intimacy coordinator. I've heard you talk about like how precisely you wanted to get that right. How do you create that sense of trust, that sense of collaboration, that sense of safety?
I mean, I think it's helpful that I'm also in the scenes with those people, because I'm putting my own body sort of on the line and at risk as they are. And so I think inherently there's sort of more trust from the jump. But our intimacy coordinator was amazing, and it's so much about being really meticulous in terms of the choreography of each sex scene. I also directorially really wanted to distinguish each sex scene, since they are like set pieces of every episode. And so it was just about having those conversations with my intimacy coordinator, and really like outlining beat by beat what body parts would be exposed, what body parts would be touched, and then the actors and their teams consenting to that long before we're shooting, so there's no surprises. And then, when we get there, we talk through the choreography again, and I think there's obviously such a harrowing history of people feeling exploited, especially women, in sex scenes in film and television. So that was really important to me, to create an environment that felt safe for my co-stars and safe for me.
And not just in sex scenes, you have been outspoken about your own experiences on sets and in environments in this industry that were not intimate, where you still were dealing with individuals by your own account who were predatory.
Yeah.
How much of an impact does that have then when you're going into a set about, it's not just about in those intimate moments, it's the whole package, it's the whole culture of this environment?
Yeah, I mean, my directorial debut was a movie called Band-Aid that I also wrote, directed, and starred in. And on that, I hired a crew that was made up entirely of women. I think, you know, because I was interested in what that would feel like, having been on some sets that where I witnessed not just inequity behind, you know, the camera in terms of hiring practices, but also, you know, some uncomfortable experiences. And I have many amazing relationships, you know, professionally with men, but I just wanted to see what that would feel like, and it was incredible. And I try to hire, you know, as many women as department heads as I can whenever I'm working. But I think so much of the environment on a set is dictated by the person running it, and so I take that responsibility really seriously. And energy is really contagious, and so yeah, I try to just set a good example and tone.
It's a good start, right?
Yeah.
But you also do participate in other people's projects. You've had 2 pretty big movies come out this year. You write from such a personal place. The movies and projects that you do are so informed by your life. I've heard you say that you don't know how to not write and make art that's about your life. When you're on a set with other people and you're collaborating with them, is that a challenge for you then to kind of let go of the reins and be in someone else's reality?
No. I like it. It's such a nice break, you know, from wearing all the hats. When I was doing Ari Aster's movie, I remember I was like in my trailer, and the producer came up and was like, "I'm so sorry, you know, you're waiting so long for your scene." And I was like, "It's like so nice to just like be in a trailer laying down." Yeah, no, I don't. I really love being able to do all of those things independent from one another, as well as at the same time.
Okay, I want to ask you about Beau is Afraid, which everyone is talking about it already. Everyone has opinions, everyone has thoughts. You are a very important figure, and you're also playing someone who is then played by someone else. I want to know how you, as an actor, coordinate that, how you think about that, especially when it's Patti LuPone, Zoe. It is an iconic figure.
It's a tall order.
We know her voice, we know how she sounds, we know how she looks. How did you put that together?
Well, I studied her. I studied her from afar, like on my own, just watching videos. I mean, she's, so singular in her mannerisms and in her tone. And then once we got to Montreal, where we shot, we spent a lot of time together. And I had her read all of my scenes into a recorder, and then I would just listen to the way that she said them and try my best to mimic them. And in some scenes, we were doing them at the same time because Ari would do quick cross-cuts between us, and so she would always go first, and which is a wild experience as an actor, you know, to watch another actor say your lines and then to go in and try to mimic, but also, you know, make it authentic to my own take. But it was a dream. Like, I mean, who better to study?
Oh my God, right? And I mean, it must be interesting as an actor to have someone look at you and say, like, you know who she could play?
You know, greatest compliment.
Right?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You are working on so many things. I also have heard you say that you like to lean into the things that scare you. So I want to know, what are you working on right now that is scaring you? Maybe season 2?
Season 2, yeah. Roku greenlit a writer's room for season 2, so we just finished writing the entire second season. And I would say that is scary. You know, like second seasons are challenging. So that was quite a task. And it was the first time that I had showrun a room. Like, you know, I wrote season 1 by myself, and I've really only written films on my own. So that was a new experience and one that was so thrilling. Yeah, the next film that I'm going to write is definitely something that scares me. I'm not going to talk about what it is, but
okay, well that
it's elevating. Yeah.
That gives us an incentive to have you back. And I also want to say the fact that Roku has done this with you is unusual and unique.
Yeah.
Right? They just gave you almost carte blanche with this show. How did that come about?
Well, Dakota Johnson's production company, Tea Time, came on board, and we brought it to Roku, and they read all 7 scripts and gave me a green light to series without one script note. And within like a couple months, we were in pre-production, which is really unheard of, and it was such a fast-tracked production schedule, but it was such a vote of confidence, and also I think. I wrote all 7 because I wanted someone to put their trust in the vision, you know, and to see that I had it, you know, that I had come from a studio film, and I think I intentionally wanted to create something that had a few less hands in it, you know, and so I couldn't believe that Roku afforded me that opportunity and that much creative freedom, and I'm so grateful to them.
It also sets a good precedent for other female writer, director, and actors. Now, you talked about being in a studio film, but I also know you have said that growing up, your mom was a big film buff, but you went to a lot of independent, kind of alternative films, and you have said you still have gaps in your pop culture knowledge. So I just want to end by asking you, so what's a big movie? What's a blockbuster that you have never seen? I want confession time, Zoe.
Oh God, there's so many. Like, I've never seen like Star Wars.
Like any Star Wars or a recent Star Wars?
I think I've seen sort of bits and pieces. I think I saw Return of the Jedi.
But you don't want to commit to me.
I can't commit to that. And I could answer not a single question. I know characters' names, you know.
If I said Han Solo to you, you'd go.
I understand.
Okay,
I have to be able to function, you know, as a human being in this world. So I know how to fake it till I make it. I don't even know if I've seen The Wizard of Oz like all the way through. It just wasn't. My mom really was like not a pop culture. She was very sort of anti-capitalist and wanted me to just be exposed to sort of obscure, bleak European cinema.
So like I've seen The Seventh Seal, but not Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's fine, right?
I think it's okay.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's a very New York kid kind of a way to be anyway, too. Zoe Lister-Jones, thank you so much for talking to us today. The show is called Slip, and you can watch it on Roku right now.
Yeah.